What is up, everyone? Welcome back to Snug Wrestling with me, your host. My name is Edgar. Who killed WCW? That is the question for today. This question has been one of those that all wrestling fans have been going back and forth for decades and decades and decades. So, why are we going to talk about this today? Well, we got a special guest with us. Ryan Gray from the NoSo Podcast is here with us today. And I'm going to let you put yourself over, Ryan. But I thought this was the perfect time to have this topic because what you guys do over on your podcast is pretty crazy to me. You guys are quite the historians out there. Is that right?
So to speak. We dip our toes in nostalgia, so to speak. We actually have a Wrestling Warzone podcast, which is our flagship. Fortunately for the network, I am not on it. It's Justin and Chad are on that one, and they do Raw and Nitro week by week. They started in '95 when Raw and SmackDown, or when Raw and Nitro started, and they are in the about a little bit right after WrestleMania 13. So they've been at it for quite a bit. In each week they do a Raw episode and a Nitro episode, and then or pay-per-view. So yes, they are very, very, very entrenched in WCW, but I'm pretty familiar with it myself also. And we have other plethora of podcasts on there. I run for NoSo, which is a truck through the 80s. We are currently in the summer of 1989. Our next episode is SummerSlam, so we do a like a monthly view or a pay-per-view of the WWF at that time. So we're definitely nostalgia based. I dip my toes in YouTube a lot, and we do current stuff for sure. Pay-per-view previews, one match per show. And then Justin and I do a lot of countdowns on TikTok. That's where we discovered each other, YouTube shorts or whatnot. So yeah, we're pretty vast over at the NoSo, but we're just like everyone. We're marks.
Don't undersell yourself, man. Like some of the stuff that I've been hearing and seeing on your guys' TikTok, for example, it's crazy. Like the statistics that you guys know that you guys talk about it's pretty impressive. And I thought I was like, and I mean this with all due respect, a huge wrestling nerd, but you guys are just like, man, you guys are like an encyclopedia, it seems like, of just wrestling knowledge and history. Like one of the videos, for example, that I saw today was just like it was a trivia video, and it was just your co-host or your partner Justin just asking just random questions about like name the most superstars from the 1991 Royal Rumble. And it's like how that's so crazy to me that people would even remember stuff like that. Just really quick, 1991, was that the one that took place in Sacramento, California?
No, that was '93.
93. Okay. Yeah, so that's where I'm from. And that's the last one that I watched on Peacock. And I don't know, it's just I have a lot of memories as a kid in that arena. So when I knew that there was a rumble there, I had to go back and watch it.
Very
I
cool.
think that's the one that Ric Flair won, I think.
Yokozuna won that one. Where Macho Man pinned him after the elbow drop, but he kicked out and then he went over the top rope. It was a terrible finish. But
see, how do you remember all that, dude? That's
I
crazy.
don't know. I've been a married man, so it's just like I've been married for the longest of time, so I don't have time for bitches, so I put it towards wrestling, I guess. Yeah.
Well, see, that's why I was excited about this topic, who killed WCW, because the second reason why I wanted to bring this up, besides getting your take on this, there's a docuseries that's supposed to be coming out on Vice TV with good old the company that The Rock co-founded, Seven Bucks Productions, is supposed to be putting this out in June. Now, we've all heard the stories from Eric Bischoff. Eric Bischoff, if I'm not mistaken, he puts a lot of the blame on the networks and Ted Turner. They were the ones that pulled, the plug on WCW. And of course, the fans, they like to blame Eric Bischoff. So with that being said, and you're pretty familiar with WCW in that time, what do you expect to see from this docuseries, or what can you tell us about what you remember about that time?
Well, so The Rock has his hand in it, right? And The Rock is the new board member of TKO or whatever. So with the WWE owning WCW, I'm sure they're going to put a nice spin on what went wrong for the favor of them. WCW has made the WWF/WWE more money than anyone, really. They're the kind of the backbone of the network, which is now Peacock, historically, with all their own docuseries, with all the nostalgia videos and all of their library whatsoever. So I don't think that, I think they'll try to put a nice spin on it and probably pass the buck to the networks. And I think that's how they will probably try to paint that picture. But you can add in Bischoff, you could add in Russo, you could add in aging stars that don't necessarily want to get out of the way. The youth movement that never went over, like that went to the WWE and had great success. Jericho, Benoit, Guerrero, all those types, not using those guys correctly. The only star they made was Goldberg, and then they kind of really poo-pooed that after a while. So you can point your fingers at a lot of people, but it's probably somewhere in the middle. But my guess would probably mostly be on the network, and honestly, probably going with Thunder and adding double the workload, and really not really investing as much time in they were with when they were having success with Nitro in 96, 97. They kind of stopped investing that time, and they added double the workload and the more pay-per-views and so on and so forth. They kind of got thin. The talent got old, and really not really getting ready for the future. You know, you look at WWE now with the Performance Center, NXT, investments, building characters left and right, all that stuff. They've learned from a lot of mistakes, even their own mistakes, so to speak. But yeah, probably not living in the now and trying to defeat WWE in the now, and not really necessarily looking to the 2000s and really trying to win the moment is probably what happened to them. And really, I personally think probably adding Thunder in the workload and then not really being prepared for that either. So they had great success and a great rise, and unfortunately, they're kind of the demise of themselves. But ultimately, if I had to put on someone, perhaps maybe the network, because I don't really think, because also honestly, aren't the networks the ones putting Russo and Bischoff and all these people in charge? So you know, the buck would stop with the network. But overall, I think it's a lot. There's definitely a lot of factors. But I do think that the WWE or The Rock or Vice or whoever will definitely try to paint a picture within their own favor when it's all said and done. But come on, this is speaking of WCW being dead, this is a fucking dead topic in my opinion. They're going to the well quite a bit here with this one.
Yeah, and this is going to be a partnership with the the Seven Bucks production and Dark Side of the Ring, excuse me. And I don't know, lately the Dark Side of the Ring episodes, I feel like they've been putting like their own spin on things, and even like a lot of people like Jim Ross are like, you know what, I'm not working with these people anymore.
Yeah.
But it's definitely going to be interesting because you know, for me growing up, I was a big WWF kid. And I was aware of WCW, but I'd never really watched it. But now growing up, looking back, a lot of people like to put blame on Eric Bischoff. A lot of people even like to put blame on Vince Russo. But kind of how you said, you know, they were very much living in the now, but also they were living in the NWO, and that was just so watered down. Adding everyone over and over again. So it could be a mixture of all those things, but I don't know about you, but I'm still looking forward to that. And this has to be supposedly going down June 4th.
Yep. I'm definitely interested in what the twist in the theme and really the vibe and the aura of their presentation will be, because the story is the story. It's just how are they going to spin it in? What is really The Rock kind of? What he doesn't really put his name on everything, so he's very protective of The Rock. The Rock protects himself the best, so
yeah,
that makes me a little bit optimistic that there should be a little bit more to this here. So you know, we'll see. I'm optimistic. I'm usually very optimistic with stuff, and even though this is, like I said, a very, 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 very dead topic, I'm pretty optimistic that we'll see how it turns out.
Yeah, and I got some of the names here. Actually, Eric Bischoff is going to be in this docuseries,
Good,
as well as Vince Russo, Booker
good.
T, Kevin Nash, and I think that's it for now. Among others, as they rehash a subject that's been covered by several books, documentaries, and podcasts many times over and over again since the company closed shop in 2001. So, yeah, that's going to be exciting to look forward to. What were you mostly on growing up? Were you WCW or WWF?
Oh, I would definitely flick back and forth. Say if I was on a Monday night, I would definitely flick back and forth. But I would favor the WWF. I'm a Northeast kind of guy, so I would probably favor the WWF. But I don't know if that's because WCW would have the encore starting at 11. So it's just like it's not like we have DVR or we can rewind or whatever. So it's like the WWE kind of had a cheat code with me because whatever I miss on Nitro, I could just rewatch at 11, and the WWF I can only watch once. So I don't know if that's why, but like I
Mm,
said, the WWF is the first wrestling that myself discovered, right?
yeah.
And I don't my first inkling in remembrance of WCW is in like 91 at Christmas, right? I got a what I thought was a generic wrestling ring because it wasn't the Hasbro big blue ring. I got the WCW Globe ring, and I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
this thing's ghetto.
Wait a
What is
minute.
this? Isn't what I've seen on the commercials. Like, Ma or Santa, what is this? And that's kind of my first remembrance of WCW was getting the generic WCW ring, not the cool Hasbro ring that Roddy Piper shakes around and is talking to me and telling me to get. I got the ghetto one.
Yeah, you were probably on the naughty list that year or something.
Yeah, for
What the
sure.
hell is that about? No, well, right on. Yeah, it was just all I knew was WWF, man. That was it. Um, I wish I would have got into WCW because looking back now,
Oh,
excuse me. Yeah, I started watching it from the beginning on Peacock. Peacock has everything, by the way. We'll see if that's gonna change now that WWE is going over to Netflix. Hopefully, it stays on Peacock because I've been going back and watching old stuff.
we still got that's still intact till 2026, I believe, with options and whatnot. So we should be all right there for a while. But yeah, I think that even if they end up on Netflix, Netflix is much more, let's say, user friendly from a scrubbing standpoint. I don't think that they're not going to be as WWE has a sketched past with a lot of their stuff, so I don't really think that Netflix would be like, all right, we'll just throw it on there and they don't have to go and scrub everything. So it could be a positive, honestly.
I hope so. I hope so because I still got a lot of world class to catch up on. I'm still
That's good.
watching that stuff. Yeah. Did you get into those like the different territories back then too?
Uh, in my past, yes, I've gone. I haven't dug in deep into like each territory. Chad does a fantastic job with this. Actually, Chad is actually starting a Patreon. Let me plug that while I can right now. Not starting a
Yeah.
Patreon. He has started a Patreon where he's dissecting 1987 week by week. So I believe he's in January week by week, and he's hitting all the territories: NWA, WWF, Mid Atlantic, whatever he's got going on over there, WCW. So yeah, he is.
Oh wow.
If that stuff interests you, he has a move by move. Just he's got the vibe for that stuff. But I'm very familiar with. I don't want to say very familiar. I'm WCW World Class Championship Wrestling. I am pretty familiar with. I would, but I'm not as keen as Chad would be.
Dude, I learned a lot watching those videos over there from the NoSo Podcast. It's pretty crazy, man. It's pretty impressive stuff. You guys have a lot of information, which is the point of these podcasts. I feel like most people listen in, they tune in, to learn stuff, to get a different perspective on things, and you guys bring all that stuff. So definitely if you're a wrestling fan, you guys got to check out the NoSo podcast. Lots of good stuff there. But moving on, we'll talk about that more later on in the show. Now that we've been talking about, excuse me, oh, I'm gonna have to edit that out.
Bro, you need a cough drop? I got you.
Oh man, I know I got a bunch right here too. It's been one of those weeks, man.
I feel you. I'm fighting
Uh,
it too. We're gonna fight through
yeah.
it together.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate that. All right. So we did mention the WCW and Vince Russo, who's also played a big part in WCW, but he's been critiquing the WWE a whole lot on his Patreon, his podcast. And when he caught wind of this angle that Tony Khan did, well, before I get into that, are you pretty familiar with what's happening in modern wrestling right now?
Oh yeah, I'm. I would say I'm the NoSo modern wrestling guy. If Chad is the WCW guy, I am definitely the modern guy. So yeah, I'm pretty up to what the speed on what's going on.
So, surprise, surprise, it sounds like Vince Russo is actually a fan of this angle that Tony Khan did in the AEW because he wants to give Tony Khan some advice, apparently, and sent out an open invitation to Tony Khan to have a sit down so Vince Russo can give Tony Khan some of his very, very valuable advice and expertise in the wrestling on how to improve this angle. What did you think about that?
I think Vince Russo's biggest fan is probably himself, but I don't. Russo is interesting to me. I think there was definitely obviously a place for him in this business. I think that probably if he's his biggest fan, he doesn't help himself the most out of anyone, really. He kind of puts his foot in his mouth a lot. He seems to not make a lot of friends, has a lot of enemies, so to speak, but you got to kind of respect that he's true to his guns. But has he evolved enough from his 1999 style to be useful on a booking team in 2024? Because if you think about it, he was hired back in the WWF in 2002. And when the biggest critique on him then was he was so out of touch, and it was only 3 years, and it was 3 years after he was there. Add 20 more. What is he really doing besides his biggest probably playbook is like the wow factor or the swerve, bro, or the bait and the switch and all that stuff. Been there, done that in 2024. It doesn't really work every other week, and you could see that playbook that he has, because a booker is a football coach. I am a football coach, so I can see like the strategic moves that these bookers make and so forth. So I like that part of it too, because it's a part of the game. Like I understand that part of it because of football or whatever, but that's for a different thing or whatever. So what I'm saying is perhaps Vince Russo's playbook is probably not up to date enough in 2024 to work. But if Vince Russo was to be like a position coach in your structure, and he was like a really good linebacker coach, so to speak, and your linebackers were struggling and whatnot, I think he could add to a fraction of your team. I just don't think that he could really necessarily be like the head coach, so to speak, in 2024, because he hasn't evolved enough. But I think he would definitely have enough knowledge or whatever to definitely perhaps give a little input, maybe have an angle or so on your show and see what happens. Because really, that's probably AEW's biggest crux is everything's the same. Everything is it's all work rate. It's all, it's all, you got to know, there's no like, they could definitely use a little flavor, and Vince Russo is a flavor, but I wouldn't put like too much seasoning would definitely be too much. But for like an appetizer or something, perhaps I'd be open-minded to it if I was TK, but I don't think at all he's for it. I don't think so. I don't think it's gonna happen at all.
So what you're saying is, hypothetically, if I was really good at Madden, then I can be a wrestling booker. That's what I got from this. Or no, I'm just kidding. No, I'm kidding.
Well, if you were really good at Madden, I don't know.
You're like, no. No, that's a good comparison, though. I like that comparison between the, being a football coach.
So what I'm saying there is, I feel that you got to have a full game plan. You have to practice. Your practice schedule is going to be planned so it incorporates with your game structure, so on and so forth. And it feels like they just kind of throw shit out there with no real footprints or reasoning, and it's
Yeah.
everything. A lot of stuff is vanilla. I like AEW. I'm watching it right now currently as we're
Yeah, me
going.
too. Same.
So but it just feels like they could use maybe another playbook or a little bit more structure within that playbook, because when they go to the games, they execute greatly on these pay-per-views. It's just that the
Yeah.
practice is sloppy, and then perhaps the overall everything's a little sloppy, and so to speak, but they always seem to kind of execute. But then again, is it your coach, or do you have like really good players? So maybe to WCW is like, to kind of go full circle here with WCW, it's just like we kind of keep shooting our foot in the self in the foot a little bit when we're not running a full program here, so to speak. And there's maybe a few holes in our games where like an older coach could see that, so to speak, maybe. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think TK needs some help, but I don't necessarily think Vince Russo is that guy for help right now.
God, no, I don't think so either. I mean, we can't have, the stuff that we had in the Attitude Era that Vince Russo takes responsibility for nowadays. Like
Different
the
playbook, but
Godfather,
yeah,
the hose, or
Val
all
Venus.
that stuff. Yeah, Val Venus, all that great stuff. How do you think that conversation would go with Vince Russo and Tony Khan? Bro, you have to listen, bro.
I
Nah,
wouldn't mind being a fly on that wall just to kind of see how that one went. It would definitely be awkward, as both men are extremely, extremely awkward. I think awkwardness would be the word for that one.
yeah, so here on this article here about this, I just like I had to go over this because it says Russo's message to Khan was straightforward, stating that he has a wrestling journalist no, stating that he was a wrestling journalist with credentials in both journalism and wrestling. He expressed his desire to ask Khan a multitude of questions. I think he's trying to get hired because there's supposed to be a new authority figure in AEW, I believe, and I don't think they've announced that yet.
They
Um,
announced that this week on Dynamite,
yeah, they're
or
supposed to announce something like that on this episode of Dynamite, I believe, if they haven't already.
yeah.
Tony Khan, because he suffered this injury, this big bad injury. He has multiple broken bones on his neck or whatever it was. Tony Khan's going to be managing remotely, so someone else has to step in to take Tony Khan's spot.
Now,
Kenny, mhm.
now we haven't, on our viewing of Dynamite and behind the curtain here, we haven't seen who that authority figure is. Would you like to be Nostradamus and predict who it is? And if we could be very wrong or we could be very right. We'll
I
see.
said yesterday that it was going to be Jim Cornette, but I was totally kidding. No, I have no idea.
More likely to see Vince Russo than Jim Cornette in AEW. I think Scott D'Amore would be a fun one. I think that would get a lot of goodwill with the fan base for sure, and perhaps maybe attract some new eyes, or at least maybe put some calmness to the shaky waters of AEW, so to speak. They're over exaggerating those shaky waters, because I think that they're fine. They could use a little more love, but yeah, I think a little buzz could do them some good.
Sorry, I had to mute myself. Got a comment here, I believe. Roll Me One Kenobi said Eric Bischoff had WCW on live support. Then Russo came in and took out the plug. So Roll Me One, thank you for your comment. Yeah, he believes that it was Vince Russo. What do you think about that? Nah, we'll see, I guess. We'll see how this thing goes. Moving on. Speaking of authority figures, and we're gonna stay on this topic of AEW. Kenny Omega, he was announced to be back on Dynamite tonight at some point. And before he came before his big return, Kenny Omega has been very verbal on his live streams. He's been getting over with me lately. He's been saying a lot of interesting things.
Yeah.
One of the things that Kenny Omega mentioned, and I wanted to get your take on this, was the fact that he's staying away from the death matches, the hardcore matches. We've seen Kenny Omega do all these crazy matches with multiple people in AEW before. John Moxley was one of the ones that I can remember off the top of my head. Brutal match. John Moxley, that's one of his favorite matches to have because he can bleed all over the place. How do you feel about the death matches in general? Are you a fan of these?
Well, I've gone to quite a few indie shows where they've had the death matches, and here's if a show has one, I feel that it could definitely bring a different vibe to that show. But if a show has a multiple of them, then it kind of it's a different style of wrestling, so to speak. It's a different psychology and so on and so forth. It's very nichey. Unfortunately, it's very indie, so to speak. So it could definitely be impactful. If back to kind of the football analogy, it's like a trick play, right? If you're running a football trick play, you run a trick play every down, that shit ain't gonna work. You run a trick play when you need it, out of the blue, it could work. So it's definitely something that could work. It definitely has its entertainment, but it has a lot of detractions too. Think of the hardcore division on a lighter scale in the mid '90s, late '90s, right? That shit got old and stale and rotted out kind of fast and died really fast. So, and that's on a much lesser non-death metal or death wrestling so to speak. Anyways, but yeah, I don't mind them, but I could definitely kind of
When they're done right,
the
it seems like because it seems like, at least for me, that we see them all the time in AEW, like over and over again. So with Kenny Omega coming back and saying this actually makes me kind of glad. And another reason why Kenny Omega is growing on me even more, because he's like, I'm seeing all these guys doing all these crazy things to each other. And basically he's like, I don't have to do it. He's like, I'm not going to be drinking anyone's blood. How am I gonna follow that? So good on Kenny Omega too. He's getting up there in age also, but yeah, less hardcore matches in AEW and more storytelling. Is that fair to say?
I'm down with that. Yeah, for sure. I think kind of a little bit with Thunder. I don't want to keep harping back to what I said, but I feel that Collision is not really helping the overall aura and flow of AEW. Think of this weekend, the night before their big Dynasty pay-per-view. You're gonna watch 3 hours of Collision and Rampage. You kind of whet your appetite. Your appetite is kind of satisfied. Why are you gonna spend $50 that next night to watch 3 more hours of the same quality of wrestling? So it's just like, what are we doing?
It's rough, dude. I went to a Dynamite episode in my hometown here, and they did Rampage after that. And after Dynamite, I stayed for 20 minutes maybe of the Rampage taping, and I couldn't do it. And I was just like, I came here and I saw what I need to see, and I'm good. I can leave now.
What the biggest flaw with that is, it takes them 25, 30 minutes to flip over the rib, flips over the apron, change the ropes. They're making a whole new show. Just flip a switch like the WWE does, and we're taping in the next thing in 5 minutes. It takes way too long to transfer from show to show. And we just watched a 2-hour action-packed show. You want us to stay another hour and watch that while we're transitioning for the half hour? It's a poor setup.
Have you ever been to by the sounds of it, it sounds like you've been to an AEW show before?
Yeah, I went to Blood and Guts last year in Boston. And I went to a few other ones in Boston and Worcester area too. Yeah, they're not bad. They're fun to go to, but it's you get desensitized to it all, right? It's just all right, been there.
Yeah.
done that. I think that the flow of the WWE shows live are just, I think, a little bit more easier now because I just feel like they've been doing it much longer. They got the cadence down, and I think the
Yeah.
AEW from that standpoint should probably take a playbook from the WWE from a match for a presentation flow on a live event, really. So I think, yeah,
Well, I don't know if how you felt about this, but like the atmosphere in the AEW show just felt completely different from the WWE just because of the crowd, not because of the amount of people that were there, but just like WWE feels like a very family friendly show, as
yep,
AEW feels like it's more like more hardcore male fans, older fans, and it just I don't know. I just felt like out of place there. It was weird. So when I go to a WWE show, there's a lot more kids there compared to AEW. So just to make things fun, I like to cheer for the heels. Just to piss off the people or like the kids there. I like to get in arguments with little kids at WWE shows. Okay,
yeah,
sue
yeah.
me.
Edgar's like, fuck them kids. I get it, buddy. I get it.
Pretty much. And it's cool. It's fun. It gets the kids into them. I've had even parents be like, "Oh, hey, thank you for making it fun for them." And it was cool. All in, good faith, good nature, and all that stuff. I tried to do that at an AEW show, and I thought I was gonna literally get beat up. Like people turned back and they looked at me like, dude, you better shut the fuck up. And I did. Like after everyone turned back and looked at me, I just sat down and I didn't say anything after that. Um,
Yeah, well, it's just like how many mid-30s, mid-40 bald white men are going to be there? It's like hanging out with like 100, well, probably 100 nowadays, but it's like hanging out with like 1,000 thousands of me. Like enough is enough. You know what I mean? Like we're all a bunch of marks. That's what it is. There's no ebb and
and
flow.
that's
There's
yeah,
no
and that's
wives there. No one's wives going with them. No one's girlfriends wants to go with them. The kids, yeah, maybe some kids will go there, but it's just a bunch of us marks that are going to fight with each other. That's all it is.
yeah, man. And that's part of the fun, I think, too. Like having that lighthearted interaction with other fans. And but anyway, I'm still gonna go to those shows and I'm still gonna talk shit, especially to them kids. All right, cool. Moving on here. We are gonna switch gears. Let's talk about WWE now. So the draft has been going on in the WWE, and I believe it's over with, or is it still going? I'm not even sure. Is the draft over?
So to speak, I believe there's a little inkling that there may be a trade or two that could happen before Monday Night Raw were to start on this Monday. So who knows? There could be a trade. But as far as I guess quote unquote draft nights, the draft's done.
Okay. So the draft was kind of, and we kind of talked about this yesterday on the other show. It was kind of just, it was whatever. Not a whole lot changed except for a few call ups from NXT, um, and Braun Breaker moving from SmackDown to Monday Night Raw.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest shocker right there. That one.
Right? Yeah. And one of the ones that was called up from NXT was Dijak. He I think would fit really well on Monday Night Raw. Big, mean looking dude, a lot of potential. Just your typical big guy, heavy wrestler, hard hitting style type of guy, right?
Yep.
So Dijak, he gets drafted to Raw, and he goes on to do an interview, and he's like, "Oh yeah, my contract's gonna expire in a few months, and no one said anything to me about renewing." So they made this big ass deal about Dijak coming up to the main roster, and then there's this that comes out. So I thought that was kind of shitty. Like, are they gonna keep this guy, or did they just are they just going to be like, oh, give him the Cameron Grimes treatment, just like, oh, here you go.
Uh, I don't know. Dijak is near and dear to my heart. He's a local guy. He's from Massachusetts. Yeah, I watched him since 2014 on the indie scene and my local indie wrestling. So it's like, oh, this guy, he moves well. He's huge. He has a WWE superstar written all over him. He stands out, right? And then he's been in WWE/NXT since 2019, really 2018 even. So he's been up and down. He's had shitty gimmicks, but he's always been consistent in the ring. But he always seems to kind of lack a little charisma and a little buzz. But all that organically has been on fire of late. Him going to NXT was awesome for his career. Corbin going to NXT was awesome for his career. Both guys coming to Raw and SmackDown with momentum. So NXT has been like not only a developmental brand, it's been a rehab brand too, which is pretty cool. And yeah, I'm optimistic for Dijak. I always thought that he'd be a really, really good tag wrestler in the WWE because he kind of lacks a little character, lacks maybe a little connection. But nah, man, this guy's on fire. Momentum is in his corner. And yeah, honestly, you know what I would do with him? I would link him straight up with Drew McIntyre because they kind of have the same persona right now. They're the same size. They move the same. They kind of look the same, body type wise. And they're trolling online. They're like their Twitter game is kind of the same.
Yeah.
So I would elevate Dijak and kind of link him up to Drew, like Drew was linked up to say Ziggler when he was called up from NXT. So I would that would be my way to rehab him, and hopefully he's kayfabing us a little bit here with the contract news because he is pretty strong on it with an online social trolling game. So hopefully
right, yeah.
Hopefully he's trolling us a little bit, and he crossed his I's and dotted his T's because WWE doesn't necessarily run a sloppy shop with the contracts. So my guard would be up a little bit on that one, hopefully for his wallet's sake anyways. But I don't know if they would call him up if they didn't have plans for him. There's been
exactly.
See
That's
Odyssey,
what I'm hoping for. Yeah.
see Odyssey Jones, see Cameron Grimes. There's a million call-ups. We don't have plans. I hope Dijak's just on the other side of the fence for that one.
The Creed brothers too, like since they've been called up, it's just like, what is going on with these guys? These guys are pretty good, and they're just.
I think they'll be all right, though. I think they've got plans for those guys.
Yeah,
I think they'll be all right.
Well, yeah. Hopefully, Dijak, he's swerving us, bro, like Vince Russo would say. Because yeah, I'm a fan of I like old school wrestling. Sorry. I like to see wrestlers that look like wrestlers wrestle, if that makes sense. And Dijak, he's got that look. So hopefully this is total bullshit and they use him the right way. I'm excited to see Dijak and a lot of the call-ups too that came up from NXT. This should add a lot of new freshness to Monday Night Raw and the product. Now that we're going into this new era, the Triple H era.
I'm glad they dropped that verbal masturbation of themselves because it was getting a little thick after WrestleMania with the Paul Levesque era, new era, so on and so forth, record breaking, so on and so forth. They've done a good job of getting away from that because that was getting a little bit much.
Oh, you're not a fan of the new era?
No, I am. But I'm not a fan of them throwing it down my throat and hitting me over the head with it nonstop. And the verbal masturbation of themselves was a little strong. But they've stopped, so they're all right.
Yeah. Well, moving on. Speaking of people that were released, and we're talking about Dijak. We talked about Cameron Grimes earlier, and he was released, and a lot of people are hopeful. A lot of people think that Cameron Grimes, he's going to be all right. He can go to TNA, maybe even AEW. EC3 believes that Cameron Grimes will also be all right. But EC3 believes that Cameron Grimes is going to fall back not as a wrestler, but as like a producer and maybe a coach one day. And I don't know why EC3 would say that. Maybe he knows something we don't know. But what do you think about EC3's comments on Cameron Grimes being a producer?
Like a Gulak role, a Kenny Dykstra role, a Hurricane role. I don't think he's ready for that. I think he has plenty more bumps in him. He's relatively young. I know he started at a young age. I really like Cameron Grimes. I thought that Bitcoin, I struck it rich character in NXT was super, super fun. But when they gave it to Baron Corbin and it fizzled out, it was just kind of like, well, what is he now? Like, he has the cool music. He has the catchphrase to the moon, but all the substance is gone. All the pizzazz is gone. It didn't feel like the engine was behind him. And it's the engine stopped getting interest in him. I think they saw the value in him as like a bump guy, as a job guy, as a whatever guy, a good hand, a good worker, so to speak. But he deserves more than that right now. And he deserves a fresh look. And his release was sad. You could tell the job meant a lot to him. The opportunity meant a lot to him. And he's still hungry. So I would be very, very surprised if he was a producer or a coach sooner. Later, I can definitely see it, but sooner, I don't know about that.
That's why I was surprised about these comments that EC3 made, because Cameron Grimes is only 30 years old.
That's crazy.
Yeah, he's still hella young. I'm older than him. And for him to be doing, unless he's really injured, then maybe I can see him doing something like that. But I don't think he's injured, because Grimes' final match in the WWE, he got squashed by Braun Breaker on SmackDown. I don't know if you remember that.
I blinked. I missed it, but I remember it because I blinked. But yeah.
Yes, that's what happened. Yeah, it was literally just one of those. The bell rings, they do a couple. He shoots off in the corner, super kick, spear. 1, 2, 3. Thank you for coming, Cameron Grimes. And then he got that treatment, man, unfortunately.
If he got Zion Quinn. So Zion Quinn got squashed. Cameron Grimes got squashed by Breaker. Man, if I get that phone call, hey, we'd like to see you on Monday Night Raw, and you get there, like, all right, you got Braun Breaker, and it's a squash. And if that's what Dijak's getting a phone call for, don't show up, brother. Don't show up.
Oh, shit. That's right, man. That's how they do you. That's when you know that you're on your way out. If you're doing squash matches, for the main roster guys. Well, cool. Right on, Ryan. Yeah, man, I learned a lot from you today, which was what I was hoping for. And I hope that this is the first of many times that you come on, so you can give us your perspective and educate us wrestling fans on on what you know.
I'm just the mark next door. Thanks for the kind words. Whenever you need me, I'm just a phone or a DM away, whatever you want to call it.
Why don't you tell the people one last time where they can find you?
All right, you can find me at the NoSo. Check us out on YouTube. Give us a sub. Check us out on TikTok. We really, after the new year, we stepped up our TikTok game. We saw a bunch of growth, but it's still a very, very small channel overall. The YouTube, we've been in the game for like a year and a half almost now, but we've saw some pretty good growth there too. But overall, we've been a podcast network for a very, very long time. Very nostalgia based. If you like nostalgia, we're probably the podcast for you. But we dip our toes in the modern game, and I'm usually on that when we do. So yeah, we got some shit. Check us out, guys.
Yeah, definitely check them out. You guys won't be disappointed. And my name is Edgar. This was Snug Wrestling. And sorry about my shitty ass voice. I promise I'll be better soon. And we'll talk soon. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, buddy.